Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, The Newsmaker Show.
On The Newsmaker Show today, Tuesday, February 23rd, glad to have in with us Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. Chief Murray, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning.
You know, this is a problem they've talked about in the state Senate and Assembly. They've had hearings all over the state. The state legislature just issued a report on it, the problem of heroin. But before we get to that, would like to start out if we could talk about the meth lab fire on Olive Place in Hornell last week. You know, I know your hands are tied as far as being able to get into two specific situations, but and the suspects and all that kind of thing. But would like to ask you, you know, as far as running these meth labs go in somebody's house, this isn't the first time that there's been a fire in the region at somebody's residence where they were trying to run a meth lab.
Right. We do see them in settings, and when we talk about a meth lab, a lot of the times we're not talking about when I think of a lab, or when the general public probably thinks of a lab, you think of beakers and using really all it takes for somebody to put one of these together is just a mixture of chemicals. Is all it really is.
And it's just on a little table, and
generally they just do it in some type of a 2 or 4 liter bottle, and the mixture of the chemicals just takes place inside the bottles. And they have to vent them and to let certain out as it heats. They have to keep venting it out. And when they don't vent it out, they're very explosive chemicals. That's when the explosion occurs.
And I don't want to make light of this. The person that is in that situation, you know, they're in a jam because do you want to call the police and fire department in and see all the chemicals that you're working on when you have an illegal operation like that going on, and yet there's a fire? It's dangerous to people. So that's quite the situation. And there were reports of someone running outside of the apartment on Olive Street who was on fire themselves. Can you tell us anything about that situation?
Yeah, that's correct. The reports that we got from multiple people was that one of the persons that was running out of the house, their clothes were actually on fire, and they were taking their clothes off as they were exiting the apartment. And as they were running down the street, smoke was still coming off the person. So we don't know how badly the person was burnt because we haven't been able to talk to the person yet to locate them. But hopefully, at first we thought, hey, are we going to have a fatality here? But fortunately, that's not the situation, apparently, and we're still attempting to locate that person now.
Yes, quite the dilemma for that person, and because the person knows that, you know, being in a room where there's a meth lab going on, they probably don't want to deal with the police. And yet when you have these burns, the natural inclination is to go to the hospital, but common sense would tell you if you go to the hospital, you're going to run into the police eventually in an arrest situation. So, a very, very dangerous situation, as you said, near fatality. Chief, on that note, you spoke recently at a public safety meeting, and we did a story on it, on the idea of people coming into the police station to discuss a heroin addiction problem without being arrested and being referred to a treatment center here. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Brian. My ideal on that is that most of the time when we as police come in contact with someone who has a heroin problem, it's number one to arrest them, or secondly, unfortunately, it's to investigate their death, because we have been seeing, not just in Hornell, but in the total area, so many deaths that are associated with heroin. We had one just last week, unfortunately. It looks like a 31-year-old man, and it's very apparent that he died of a heroin overdose. So rather than it going to those extremes, if a person knows that they've got a problem, or if a family member wants to intervene with someone that has a problem, we do have a local treatment facility the Loyola Treatment Facility, which is in the old St. James Hospital, and they assured me that if we have people that come into our police department that are looking for help, they would assist in getting the people into their facility for treatment, and that's kind of the line I was looking for. If people have a problem, and they want to come into us to assist them in getting treatment, that's another vein that the police can be involved in.
The heroin withdrawal, quite the thing to go through, but worse to die of a heroin overdose, obviously.
Yeah, it is, and one of the problems with heroin, I think it's the worst drug out there. I mean, I know we deal with a lot of other type drugs, but heroin, by far, to me, is the very worst drug that's out there. We deal with people that are going through withdrawals, and it's very painful. We deal with the people that continually use it, and unfortunately, you can almost tell that they're on heroin because their body just deteriorates, and to the point where they end up dying.
And this is obviously something, over the possibility of overdosing on heroin is a very real thing. And so if people come into the Hornell Police Station, and, I have to say, I've been in and out of the police station for years as a reporter, and I've seen your officers talk to people, and they're very nice, when the people come in to talk about problems that they're having. And without naming any names here, I was there one day when a woman was there talking about a relative of hers who had a drug problem and her concerns. And, the officer at the desk was not arrest happy. It wasn't, send out 10,000 cars and nail the guy. No, it was how to help her, and he was very nice, and he was consoling her. So, you do have a very nice police department. And
thank you.
Yes, and people can go there without being arrested to discuss this.
Absolutely, and that's what we want to maybe set that line up. But realize, I mean, we can warn people, but once we are out there enforcing also, and we take it very serious, and it's very serious charges when people are arrested for it. So on that other vein, I mean, we do have officers out there that are very effective at enforcing the law. But my view on it is if someone has a drug addiction and they want to come and get help, we're not going to pursue that person.
Right, and you could get them into the hospital's Loyola Center.
Yes, I was assured that's an option that's open that we can.
Do they also treat other things like alcohol and the many other drugs that people are having problems with?
They do, and I don't want to speak for them. You could do I'm sure you could do a show just on what they've got.
Be glad
available.
to. But yes, and they could help out people suffering from addiction problems and. Again, the chief is saying, don't be afraid to come in if you or a relative or a friend, or someone you're concerned about, and you just need someone to talk to. The Hornell Police Station could be the place to go for you to discuss these issues. We talked about the meth lab at the beginning, and obviously there's a difference between meth and heroin. Chief, if I could ask you, what are the effects when you see, you've talked before about the terrible effects of bath salts and how the people who take this drug pretty much are going to a state where they're flipped out, psychotic, I suppose you could say, and hallucinations and hearing voices and all that sort of thing. When you see the heroin addicts, what's their behavior like?
It's a little different. It's more of a sleepy type nature. And kind of despondent type of activity.
And how about methamphetamines?
Methamphetamines, it's about like a cocaine. It's
jumpy.
Again, you could get jumpy and hyper type things. Yes.
And I'm guessing that it's not just, heroin addicts, but any type of person with any kind of addiction problem or a relative or friend. If you needed somebody to talk to for some advice, Hornell Police, very nice and can be very helpful in that situation. Like I said, I've been in and out of the police station as a reporter, and I've seen the way that the police are very kind. The officer at the desk or whoever happens to be talking, and that could be a life-changing thing for someone to come in and say, "Hey, I've got a son or a grandson or a nephew or a stepson or a cousin or whatever." A best friend, whoever, spouse, whatever the situation is, these, that can become very overwhelming for the person who lives with the addict, because sometimes the addict's behavior gets very aggressive or out of control, and sometimes people steal things. We'll be back in just a moment with Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray, and we'll talk about his work with District Attorney Brooks Baker in just a moment. Listening to the Newsmaker Show, Brian O'Neill on Today with Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. And we're going to talk now about the work that the Steuben County District Attorney Brooks Baker is doing with the Hornell Police Department. Chief, during the break you said that greater efforts are being made, and there's more to come. Can you tell us about that with the work between the Hornell Police Department and the DA's office?
Yeah, Brooks Baker has assigned two investigators to work throughout Steuben County, and they have been working in Hornell with our investigator Tom Iene. He's been working with investigator Walt Mackney and investigator Noel Terwilliger from their department.
Some undercover work is either going on or is going to be going on. Is there anything you can say there?
It has been going on, and it will continue to going on. We're trying to collaborate with other departments throughout the county as well. The Sheriff's Department, the State Police. We have some officers that we've been working with, like with the State Police, for instance. Trooper Brandon Beers, who used to work for my department.
Right.
He does a phenomenal job.
I bet.
With drug interdictions. So he has been working with our department too, just sharing information, and it makes it for a very much more effective nature out there. But Kyle Amadon from Canisteo, he's doing a phenomenal job down in Canisteo. Another one of our officers that went on to another job.
Yes, he is. I noticed he is doing a great job down there in Canisteo.
And again, we cooperate with him.
Sure, and that would be easy with him having been an ex-Hornell police officer. The back and forth discussions, I'm sure, a lot of cooperation there.
We have great relationships, which really I think helps us when we are doing drug investigations, because you can't just draw a line and say, hey, we're not going to pass this line, because the drugs outside the city will eventually come into the city, and it'll go back and forth. So having that good working relationship is so crucial to having an effective drug enforcement effort.
We're talking with the Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray today here on the Newsmaker Show. Chief Murray, the undercover work, and the investigations in general, what age group do you find gets into, let's say, heroin or meth or bath salts? Do you find that, there's a certain age for certain drugs where, among high school students, this drug is more common, college students, this drug is more common, that kind of thing?
Right. Fortunately, right now, we're not seeing, and it's not to say that there may not be that one case out there, but we're certainly not seeing any of these hard drugs on the high school level. Generally, we're seeing people that are in their mid to late 20s, 30s, that are involved with the harder drugs. And
when you say harder drugs, are we talking heroin, bath salts, those sorts of things?
Bath salts, cocaine. those type drugs.
I heard from a former school superintendent in the area. We were talking off the record, and I said, I remember in school in the 1980s, you'd hear about a lot about marijuana. I believe in the later 80s, crack cocaine. What about today's, and the school superintendent said to me, today it's tougher to tell because a lot of it's painkillers, stolen painkillers and prescription drugs, and it doesn't have the marijuana smell, and they don't do the cocaine stuff with the nose is always getting rubbed, or they don't have the heroin needle marks all over the elbows. With the high school students and college students who might be playing around with the prescription drugs, what are the telltale signs?
Well, I think probably their activity level, their grades, how they're acting in class, if they're falling asleep, those type of things that would be telltale signs. And again, I suppose the diversion of illegal or legal drugs into the illegal market
sure.
like that is something that perhaps you would see at a younger age. But it also has led when people are getting scripts, like oxycodone is one that
right.
we see out there a lot, that people have pain medications. And there's been an effort to tighten them up and to have the different doctors are coordinated with one another, and it's becoming more difficult for people to get the level of drugs that perhaps they become addicted to. And that's kind of when we see people going into the illicit drugs such as heroin is one.
And I'm sure that this is something that those who work at the Council on Addiction, so a Jim Bassage or a Norm McCumsky might even be working with your department at some level, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, we have meetings, and we have officers that are on a couple of the boards that they do. So we do try to monitor and keep an eye on what's going on in the high schools and across the county as a whole.
Back in the 1980s, you'd hear the, what was the slogan from Mrs. Reagan, just say no. What kind of things are they saying to the youth today? Does that message still continue, or what are they telling the students in high school, college, maybe even grade school, in order to warn them to stay away from bath salts, marijuana, prescription drugs, heroin, and so on?
Right. I mean, I'm probably not the best of sources to know exactly how they are doing that. Jason Day we have working in the schools on a daily basis, and that's one of the things that he does, and he does it both from grade school right up through high school.
Right.
Is pounding that the problems of drugs, talking to kids, and he's constantly in a counseling mode in his job.
Sure. And the school resource officer job, that's something that probably helps a lot of people. I know that Officer Day is very well liked for his work there.
Does a great job. He does a phenomenal job. He's constantly going from school to school, and generally he wears almost like a sneakers because he's constantly running when he's at work. So he does a great job, and we're fortunate to have him.
The canine unit. So
what we generally do when we go into schools, we'll need more than one dog.
Okay.
So we'll generally get dogs from both the sheriff's department. They've got 2 dogs, and the state police have several dogs. So they go in with a couple of them. And we just acquired our own canine. So that's one of the efforts that we're moving forward with now. Officer Emo now has a canine, and he's in the process of being trained. And as a matter of fact, he was the last couple of search warrants we did. We utilized our canine.
Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray, was there anything I did not bring up that you wanted to discuss?
I just wanted to maybe say that we've got some younger officers on our force at this time that are doing a phenomenal job out there with traffic diversions and looking at what's going on out there. Officer Ryan Harrison's been doing a great job for us recently. Sergeant Todd Gillio, Officer McHenry and Officer Wood, and then of course Officer Emo now with their drug dog. We look forward to seeing a lot from these officers with future enforcement.
And goes without saying, I believe we brought him up earlier in the interview, Investigator Tom Ianni, who does a fantastic job.
He does a great job.
They're all doing a heck of a job there, Chief.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate that, and they are. I mean, Tom is a great worker. He he's early in the morning, sometimes till late at night with so many cases that he's been doing lately.
All righty. Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray, I want to thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you very much, Brian.